Marcus Williams pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of the prestigious Ocean View Medical Center, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished floor. At 62 years old, his back ached from decades of bending, mopping, and scrubbing, but he moved with quiet dignity through the corridors where doctors, nurses, and administrators hurried past without a second glance. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the spotless floors that Marcus had cleaned since 4 in the morning. He wore the same navy blue janitor's uniform he had worn for the past 15 years, with his name embroidered in simple white letters above the breast pocket. His gray hair was neatly trimmed, his face weathered but kind, and his dark eyes held a depth that most people never bothered to notice. Dr. Jennifer Hayes, a young resident in her designer scrubs, nearly collided with Marcus as she rushed toward the elevator, her phone pressed to her ear. She glanced at him with obvious irritation, as if his presence was an inconvenience in her important day. "Watch where you're going," she muttered under her breath, not bothering to lower her voice. Marcus simply nodded and moved his cart aside, allowing her to pass. He had learned long ago that responding to such comments only made things worse. The elevator doors opened, revealing Dr. Richard Sterling, the hospital's chief of surgery. Sterling was known for his expensive suits, his perfectly styled hair, and his complete disdain for anyone he considered beneath his station. His eyes swept over Marcus dismissively before settling on Dr. Hayes. "Jennifer, just the person I wanted to see," Sterling said warmly. "I need to discuss the Morrison case with you." As the elevator doors began to close, Marcus heard Sterling's voice, deliberately loud enough for him to hear. "I don't understand why they let the help use the same elevators as medical staff. It's unprofessional." Marcus watched the numbers above the elevator light up as it ascended. He had heard similar comments countless times over the years, each one a small cut that he had learned to ignore. But, sometimes, in quiet moments like these, the accumulated weight of those words pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. He continued his rounds, cleaning examination rooms, restocking supplies, and emptying trash bins. In room 314, he found Mrs. Chen, an elderly patient who had been in the hospital for weeks. She was sitting by the window, staring out at the parking lot with tears in her eyes. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen," Marcus said softly, beginning to empty the wastebasket. "How are you feeling today?" Mrs. Chen turned to him with surprise. Most of the hospital staff barely acknowledged her presence, too busy with their important tasks to notice a lonely old woman. "Oh, hello, Marcus," she said, wiping her eyes. "I'm okay, I suppose. Just missing my garden. This time of year, my roses would be blooming." Marcus paused in his work. "What kind of roses do you grow?" Mrs. Chen's face brightened slightly. "Red ones, mostly. But I have a beautiful yellow bush that my husband planted before he passed. It blooms twice a year, and the flowers are as big as dinner plates." "That sounds beautiful," Marcus said, genuinely interested. "I bet they smell wonderful." For the next few minutes, Marcus listened as Mrs. Chen described her garden, her husband, and the life she had built over decades. When he finally left the room, she was smiling for the first time in weeks. This was what made Marcus's job worthwhile, not the cleaning or the maintenance, but these small moments of human connection. He understood that in a place filled with sickness and fear, sometimes all people needed was someone to see them as human beings. As he made his way to the cafeteria to clean the lunch tables, Marcus overheard a group of nurses discussing the upcoming hospital board meeting. They were excited about a special guest who would be speaking, a retired Navy admiral who was now involved in hospital administration consulting. "I heard he's incredibly impressive," said Nurse Rodriguez. "Decorated war hero, successful businessman. The board is hoping he'll help us improve efficiency." "Probably just another consultant who'll tell us to cut staff and increase profits," replied Nurse Johnson cynically. "They never understand what it's like to actually work in a hospital." Marcus wiped down the tables, listening to their conversation with mild interest. Over the years, he had seen many consultants and executives come and go, each promising revolutionary changes that rarely materialized. He had learned to keep his head down and focus on his own work. That afternoon, as Marcus was cleaning the main lobby, he noticed an unusual amount of activity. Hospital administrators were scurrying around, adjusting flower arrangements and polishing already spotless surfaces. The executive elevator, which was rarely used, was being tested repeatedly. "The Admiral arrives in an hour," he heard Administrator Patricia Wells tell her assistant. "Everything needs to be perfect. This contract could mean millions for the hospital." Marcus continued his work, invisible among the chaos of preparation. He had perfected the art of being unseen, moving through spaces like a ghost in blue overalls. It was a survival skill he had developed over years of working in environments where his presence was tolerated but not welcomed. At 3 o'clock, a black town car pulled up to the hospital's main entrance. Through the glass doors, Marcus could see a man in his 70s step out of the vehicle. He was tall and straight-backed, wearing a simple but well-tailored suit. His silver hair was precisely cut, and he moved with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. The hospital's senior staff assembled in the lobby to greet their important visitor. CEO Margaret Davidson smoothed her jacket nervously as the man approached the entrance. Dr. Sterling stood beside her, his usual arrogant expression replaced with something approaching respect. Marcus was cleaning a nearby water fountain when the man entered the building. The automatic doors opened with a soft whoosh, and, suddenly, the lobby was filled with an energy that Marcus couldn't quite define. It wasn't just the nervousness of the staff or the importance of the visitor, there was something else, something familiar about the way the man carried himself. "Admiral Thompson," CEO Davidson said, extending her hand with a practiced smile. "Welcome to Ocean View Medical Center. We're honored to have you here." Admiral James Thompson shook her hand firmly, his gray eyes taking in every detail of the lobby. His gaze swept across the assembled staff, the polished marble floors, the expensive artwork on the walls. For just a moment, his eyes lingered on Marcus, who was quietly wiping down the fountain. "Thank you for having me," the Admiral said in a voice that commanded attention without being loud. "I look forward to learning about your operation." As the group moved toward the elevator, Marcus heard Dr. Sterling boasting about the hospital's state-of-the-art equipment and prestigious reputation. The Admiral listened politely, but Marcus noticed that his attention seemed focused on details that the others were ignoring: the condition of the floor, the cleanliness of the fixtures, the way the support staff moved through the space. The elevator doors closed, carrying the important visitors to their important meeting. Marcus returned to his fountain cleaning, but something about the Admiral nagged at his memory. There had been something familiar about his bearing, his direct way of looking at things, even the set of his shoulders. Later that evening, as Marcus was finishing his shift, he encountered Mrs. Chen again in the hallway. She was walking slowly with her four-pole, trying to get some exercise as her doctor had recommended. "Marcus," she called out with genuine pleasure. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about my garden." "What about it, Mrs. Chen?" "Well, I realized that even though I can't be with my roses right now, I can still share them with others. I've been telling my nurse about them, and she seemed so interested. She said she's trying to start her own garden." Marcus smiled. "That's wonderful. I bet she appreciated the advice." "It made me feel useful again," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "Like I still had something to offer." As Marcus walked to the employee parking garage that evening, he reflected on Mrs. Chen's words. The feeling of being useful, of having something to offer, it was something he hadn't experienced in a long time. In the eyes of most people at the hospital, he was simply part of the building's infrastructure, no more noteworthy than the heating system or the elevator. But he knew his worth wasn't determined by other people's recognition. He had learned that lesson many years ago, in a place far from this comfortable hospital, where recognition could mean the difference between life and death, and where true leadership was measured not by rank or title, but by the willingness to serve others regardless of the cost. The parking garage was nearly empty as Marcus made his way to his 15-year-old Honda Civic. The car had seen better days, but it was reliable and paid for, two qualities Marcus valued above flashiness. As he drove through the quiet suburban streets toward his small apartment, he thought about the day's events. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, more cleaning, more invisible moments, more small acts of kindness that went unnoticed by those who considered themselves important. But Marcus had long ago made peace with his role in the world. He understood that dignity came from within, not from external recognition, and that the value of a person's work was measured not by its prestige but by its impact on others. He pulled into the parking lot of his apartment complex, a modest building that housed mostly working-class families and retirees. His one-bedroom unit on the second floor was simply furnished but spotlessly clean. The walls were decorated with a few photographs, some of his late wife Sarah, others of friends from a life that seemed increasingly distant. As he prepared a simple dinner of soup and sandwich, Marcus's mind drifted to the new Admiral who had visited the hospital. There had been something about the man that stirred old memories, feelings he had carefully buried beneath years of routine and resignation. He sat at his small kitchen table, eating his meal while watching the evening news. The anchor was discussing military veterans and the challenges they faced in transitioning to civilian life. Marcus turned off the television and sat in silence, remembering a time when his life had been filled with purpose and meaning, when his actions had mattered in ways that few people could understand. But that was another lifetime, and Marcus Williams the janitor had learned to find meaning in smaller things, in Mrs. Chen's smile, in the cleanliness of floors that few people noticed, in the quiet satisfaction of work well done regardless of who was watching. Outside his window, the city lights twinkled like distant stars. Somewhere in those lights was the hospital where he would return tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock, where he would once again become invisible in his blue uniform, pushing his squeaky cart through corridors filled with people who saw him as nothing more than part of the background. But Marcus carried within him a secret that none of them could imagine, a truth that would shock those who dismissed him so casually. For now, though, it remained buried beneath years of deliberate obscurity, waiting for the right moment to surface. As he prepared for bed, Marcus looked at a photograph on his nightstand, a picture of a younger version of himself in dress whites, standing at attention with his chest covered in ribbons and medals. The man in the photograph looked proud, confident, ready to face any challenge the world might throw at him. Marcus touched the glass gently, remembering the weight of those medals, the meaning behind each ribbon, the brothers he had served with, and the oath he had taken so many years ago. Then, he turned off the light and settled into bed, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day of being unseen, unrecognized, and underestimated. He closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, unaware that his carefully constructed invisible life was about to be turned upside down by a chance encounter that would remind him, and everyone else, of exactly who Marcus Williams really was. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, with heavy clouds hanging low over the city. Marcus arrived at the hospital at his usual time, using his employee keycard to enter through the service entrance. The building was quiet at this hour, with only the night shift staff finishing their rounds and the early cleaning crew beginning their work. Marcus went through his morning routine with mechanical precision, collecting his supplies from the storage room, checking his cleaning cart, reviewing the daily task list posted by the head custodian. Today's schedule included deep cleaning the executive conference room where the Admiral would be conducting meetings with department heads. As he wheeled his cart toward the elevator, Marcus encountered Jake Morrison, a young man who worked in the hospital's IT department. Jake was carrying a box of computer equipment, struggling with its weight as he tried to navigate the hallway. "Need help with that?" Marcus offered, setting aside his mop to assist. Jake looked surprised by the offer. Most people in the hospital treated the janitorial staff as if they were invisible, neither offering help nor accepting it. But there was something about Marcus's calm demeanor and genuine concern that put people at ease. "Thanks, that would be great," Jake said gratefully. "These servers are heavier than they look." Together, they carried the equipment to the IT office. As they worked, Jake found himself talking to Marcus about his struggles with the demanding hospital environment. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just a number here," Jake confided. "The doctors and administrators act like the support staff don't exist. Yesterday, Dr. Sterling walked right past me in the hallway like I was invisible. I've been working here for 2 years, and I don't think he's ever acknowledged me once." Marcus listened without judgment, understanding the young man's frustration better than Jake could know. "Some people see rank and title," Marcus said quietly. "Others see the person. The ones who matter will see you for who you are." "How do you stay so positive?" Jake asked. "I mean, you must deal with this stuff all the time." Marcus was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "I learned a long time ago that respect isn't something you can demand. It's something you earn through your actions, regardless of whether anyone notices. After helping Jake, Marcus made his way to the executive floor. The conference room was impressive: polished mahogany table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. As he cleaned, Marcus could hear voices from the adjoining office where Admiral Thompson was reviewing reports with hospital administrators. Through the partially open door, he caught fragments of their conversation. The Admiral was asking detailed questions about hospital operations, staff retention rates, and patient satisfaction scores. His questions were precise and penetrating, revealing a mind that understood the complexity of large organizations. "Your efficiency ratings are impressive," Admiral Thompson was saying, "but I'm concerned about the staff turnover rates in your support departments. High turnover usually indicates systemic problems." CEO Davidson's voice was defensive. "We maintain competitive wages for all positions. Some turnover is inevitable in service positions." "Competitive doesn't necessarily mean adequate," the Admiral replied. "And turnover isn't just about wages. It's about respect, recognition, and creating an environment where every employee understands their value to the mission." Marcus found himself listening more intently. The Admiral was talking about concepts that most hospital executives dismissed as irrelevant to their bottom line. Dr. Sterling's voice cut through the conversation. "With respect, Admiral, we're running a medical facility, not a military unit. Different rules apply. Our priority has to be patient care and fiscal responsibility. The principles of effective leadership are universal, Dr. Admiral Thompson replied firmly. An organization that doesn't value all its people will eventually fail to serve any of them effectively." Marcus finished cleaning the conference room and moved on to other areas, but the Admiral's words stayed with him. It had been years since he'd heard someone in authority speak about leadership in terms of service rather than dominance. Around mid-morning, as Marcus was restocking supplies in the surgical wing, he witnessed an incident that perfectly illustrated the hospital's culture problem. Nurse Rodriguez was struggling to move a heavy piece of equipment down the hallway when Dr. Hayes approached from the opposite direction. Instead of offering to help, Dr. Hayes sighed impatiently and snapped, "Can't you do that somewhere else? I have important rounds to make." Nurse Rodriguez, clearly frustrated but trying to remain professional, began maneuvering the equipment toward the wall to create more space. As she did so, the machine's wheel caught on an electrical cord, causing it to tip dangerously. Marcus immediately stepped forward, steadying the equipment before it could fall. Together, he and Nurse Rodriguez safely moved it to its destination. "Thank you so much," Nurse Rodriguez said, clearly grateful. "I don't know what would have happened if that had fallen." "Happy to help," Marcus replied simply. Dr. Hayes had continued on her way without a backward glance, but the incident had been observed by someone else. Admiral Thompson had been walking down the same hallway, on his way to tour the surgical facilities. Marcus didn't notice the Admiral's presence, but Thompson had watched the entire interaction with keen interest. The Admiral's gray eyes followed Marcus as he returned to his duties, noting the quiet competence with which he moved, the way he seemed to anticipate problems before they occurred, and, most importantly, the respect with which he treated everyone he encountered. Later that day, Marcus was cleaning the main lobby when he overheard a heated conversation between two nurses. "I can't believe they're cutting our break time again," Nurse Johnson was saying angrily. "We're already understaffed, and now they want us to work longer shifts with less rest." "It's all about the bottom line," Nurse Rodriguez replied. "They don't care about staff welfare as long as the profits keep coming in." "Maybe this Admiral will understand," Nurse Johnson said hopefully. "I heard he's supposed to be evaluating the whole operation." Nurse Rodriguez shook her head skeptically. "He's probably just another consultant who'll recommend more cuts. These military types are all about efficiency and chain of command. He won't care about our working conditions any more than the current administration does." Marcus continued his cleaning but found himself hoping that Nurse Rodriguez was wrong. There had been something different about Admiral Thompson, something that suggested he might actually understand what it meant to lead people rather than simply manage them. That afternoon brought an emergency that tested everyone's professionalism. A multi-car accident had filled the emergency room with critical patients, and all available staff were called to assist. In the controlled chaos that followed, Marcus found himself helping in ways that went far beyond his job description. When the crash team needed additional equipment moved quickly, Marcus was there. When family members needed directions or comfort, he provided both. When blood needed to be transported between departments, he navigated the crowded hallways with quiet efficiency. During the emergency, he worked alongside Dr. Sarah Martinez, one of the few staff members who had always treated him with respect. Dr. Martinez was an emergency room physician who understood that saving lives required teamwork from everyone, regardless of their title. "Marcus, can you help me move this patient to radiology?" she asked without hesitation. "Of course, doctor," Marcus replied, immediately positioning himself to assist with the gurney. As they navigated the busy hallways, Dr. Martinez spoke to Marcus as an equal. "Have you seen situations like this before? You seem remarkably calm under pressure." Marcus was quiet for a moment before answering. "I've seen worse," he said simply. "The important thing is to focus on what needs to be done rather than the chaos around you." Dr. Martinez looked at him with new interest, but before she could ask more questions, they had reached their destination and the demands of the emergency took precedence. Admiral Thompson was in the hospital's administrative wing when the emergency began, but he soon made his way to the emergency department to observe how the staff handled the crisis. What he saw there impressed him. Despite the obvious systemic problems in the hospital's culture, the medical staff worked together with skill and dedication when lives were on the line. But what caught his attention was the quiet man in the blue janitor's uniform who seemed to be everywhere at once, anticipating needs, solving problems, and moving through the chaos with a calm competence that reminded him of the best non-commissioned officers he had known during his military career. When the emergency finally subsided and the last patient was stabilized, the medical staff began to decompress. Dr. Martinez approached Marcus in the hallway. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "Your help made a real difference today." "Just doing what needed to be done," Marcus replied. "No, it was more than that," Dr. Martinez insisted. "You have a way of staying calm that helps everyone around you. Have you ever considered becoming a paramedic or an EMT? You have natural instincts for this work." Marcus smiled slightly. "I appreciate that, doctor, but I'm content where I am." As Dr. Martinez walked away, Admiral Thompson approached from the other direction. He had been close enough to hear the conversation, and his interest in Marcus Williams was growing stronger by the hour. "Excuse me," the Admiral said, addressing Marcus directly for the first time. Marcus looked up from the medical equipment he was cleaning, surprised to be addressed by such a high-ranking visitor. "Yes, sir?" Admiral Thompson studied Marcus's face carefully, noting the intelligence in his eyes, the way he stood at attention without seeming to think about it, and something else, something familiar that he couldn't quite place. "I wanted to thank you for your help during the emergency," the Admiral said. "I noticed that you went well beyond your assigned duties to assist the medical staff." "Thank you, sir, but it was nothing special. Everyone did their part." The Admiral's eyes narrowed slightly. There was something about Marcus's bearing, his choice of words, the way he addressed him as sir with genuine respect rather than mere politeness. "Have we met before?" Admiral Thompson asked directly. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. After all these years of carefully maintained anonymity, he found himself looking into the eyes of someone who might recognize him for who he really was. For a moment, he considered deflecting the question, maintaining the fiction that had protected him for so long. But there was something about Admiral Thompson's direct gaze that demanded honesty. This was a man who had dedicated his life to service, who understood the weight of duty and sacrifice. Marcus found that he couldn't lie to him. "Not directly, sir," Marcus said carefully. "But our paths may have crossed in another context, many years ago." Admiral Thompson's eyes widened slightly as memory began to stir. There was something about Marcus's voice, his posture, the quiet authority that seemed to radiate from him despite his humble position. "What's your full name?" the Admiral asked quietly. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then straightened slightly. "Marcus Williams, sir." The Admiral stared at him for a long moment, his mind racing through decades of memories, trying to place the face and name in the proper context.
Then, slowly, recognition began to dawn.
Marcus Williams, he repeated thoughtfully.
What was your rate?
The question hung in the air between them like a bridge across time. Marcus knew that his carefully constructed anonymity was about to crumble, that the life he had built in the shadows was about to be exposed to the light. But, looking into Admiral Thompson's eyes, he realized that perhaps it was time. Perhaps 15 years of hiding had been long enough. Senior Chief Petty Officer, Marcus said quietly.
U.S. Navy SEALs, retired.
The words seemed to echo in the hallway, carrying with them the weight of a truth that would change everything.
Admiral Thompson's expression shifted from curiosity to amazement to something approaching awe.
Senior Chief Marcus Williams, the Admiral said slowly.
I'll be damned.
Marcus stood at attention now, the muscle memory of decades of military service overriding years of deliberate invisibility. For the first time in 15 years, he allowed himself to be seen for who he truly was. Admiral Thompson extended his hand, and, when Marcus shook it, it was no longer the handshake between a visiting consultant and a hospital janitor. It was the greeting between two warriors who had served their country with honor and distinction. Sir, Marcus said simply. Senior Chief, Admiral Thompson replied with deep respect.
We need to talk.
Admiral Thompson led Marcus to a quiet corner of the hospital's chapel, a peaceful space away from the bustling hallways where their conversation could proceed without interruption. The stained glass windows cast colored patterns on the wooden pews, creating an atmosphere of reverence that seemed appropriate for what was about to unfold. They sat facing each other, two men whose lives had intersected in ways that neither had expected. Admiral Thompson's expression was a mixture of amazement, respect, and deep curiosity about how one of the Navy's most decorated special operations veterans had ended up working as a janitor in a civilian hospital. Senior Chief Marcus Williams, Admiral Thompson began, his voice filled with genuine respect. 3 Navy Crosses, 2 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars with Valor. If my memory serves me correctly, you were the SEAL who led the hostage rescue operation in Somalia that saved 17 American civilians.
Marcus shifted uncomfortably in the pew.
Hearing his accomplishments recited aloud after years of deliberate anonymity felt surreal, like listening to someone describe a stranger's life. That was a long time ago, sir, Marcus said quietly.
Different life, different person.
The hell it was, Admiral Thompson replied firmly.
Honor doesn't have an expiration date, Senior Chief. Neither does courage. I read the after-action reports from that operation.
What you did in Mogadishu was nothing short of miraculous. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, remembering. The operation had been planned as a simple extraction, get in, secure the hostages, get out. But, intelligence had been wrong, the situation had deteriorated rapidly, and what should have been a 2-hour mission had turned into an 18-hour nightmare of urban warfare. We lost 3 good men in that operation, Marcus said, his voice heavy with old grief. The mission may have been successful, but the cost. The cost was paid by warriors who knew what they were risking, Admiral Thompson replied. And, because of your leadership, 17 innocent Americans went home to their families instead of dying in a terrorist stronghold.
How many others might have died if you hadn't acted?
Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. These were conversations he had avoided for 15 years, memories he had buried under layers of routine and deliberate insignificance. After Somalia, I was offered a commission, Marcus continued. They wanted to make me an officer, give me my own team, bigger missions. But something had changed in me.
The weight of command, of making decisions that got people killed. I couldn't carry it anymore. Admiral Thompson nodded with understanding.
He had seen it before, good men broken not by enemy action but by the terrible burden of leadership in combat.
Some recovered, found ways to channel their experience into new forms of service. Others, like Marcus, simply disappeared.
So you retired and became invisible, Admiral Thompson observed. But why here? Why this job? Marcus looked around the chapel, gathering his thoughts. After I left the Navy, I tried a lot of things. Security consulting, defense contracting, even teaching at a military academy for a while. But everywhere I went, People wanted to use my reputation, my experiences. They wanted the war hero, not the man. He paused, remembering the years of struggle that had followed his retirement. I had some problems. PTSD, depression, survivor's guilt. I was drinking too much, making bad decisions. My wife Sarah stood by me through all of it, tried to help me find my way back. But I was lost, Admiral. Completely lost. Admiral Thompson listened without judgment. He had counseled many veterans through similar struggles, understanding that the transition from military to civilian life could be more challenging than any combat mission. Sarah got sick about 17 years ago, Marcus continued, his voice growing softer. Cancer. The treatments were expensive, and my veterans' benefits weren't enough to cover everything. I took whatever work I could find, construction, security, anything that paid. When she died, I was broken financially and emotionally. The Admiral waited patiently as Marcus gathered himself to continue. After the funeral, I was sitting in our empty apartment, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. I had enough money left for about 2 months of rent, no job prospects, and no idea who Marcus Williams was supposed to be if he wasn't a SEAL or Sarah's husband. Marcus stood and walked to one of the stained glass windows, looking at the pattern of light without really seeing it. That's when I saw the job listing for this position. Night shift janitor, minimal human interaction required, decent benefits. It seemed perfect for someone who just wanted to disappear. So I applied under my real name but left off my military service. Told them I had been a maintenance worker at various facilities. And no one ever questioned it? Marcus laughed bitterly. Who questions the background of a janitor? As long as I showed up on time and did the work, nobody cared where I came from or what I had done before? It was perfect anonymity. Admiral Thompson was beginning to understand. You chose to become invisible because visibility had become too painful. Exactly. As a janitor, I could help people in small ways without the weight of command, without making decisions that could get people killed. I could clean up messes without creating new ones. It was peaceful. The Admiral stood and joined Marcus at the window. But you've been hiding for 15 years, Senior Chief. That's not peace, that's penance. What are you punishing yourself for? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had spent so many years avoiding self-examination that having someone else voice the truth was shocking. Sergeant Rodriguez, Marcus said quietly. 22 years old, married, new baby. He was on my team in Somalia. I ordered him to take point going into the building where the hostages were held. He took a sniper's bullet to the head because of my decision. And the other two? Petty Officer Chen, weapons specialist. I sent him to secure the roof. Mortar round took out half the building. Corpsman Jackson, he died trying to save Chen. All of them died because I gave the orders. Admiral Thompson was quiet for several minutes, understanding now the burden that Marcus had been carrying all these years. You know what the official report said about that operation? The Admiral finally asked. I never read it. It said that Senior Chief Petty Officer Marcus Williams demonstrated exceptional leadership under impossible circumstances, that his tactical decisions and personal courage saved 17 civilian lives and prevented what could have been a diplomatic and humanitarian disaster. It recommended you for the Navy Cross. 17 people lived, Marcus said. But 3 of my men died. And how many more would have died if you had hesitated? How many more of your team would have been lost if you hadn't made the hard decisions when they needed to be made? Marcus turned away from the window, unable to face the Admiral's penetrating gaze. You don't understand. Every night I dream about those 3 men. I see their faces, hear their voices. Rodriguez had just shown me pictures of his daughter. Chen was planning to propose to his girlfriend when we got back. Jackson died with my name on his lips, asking me to tell his mother he loved her. Did you? Did I what? Tell his mother. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Yes. I went to all their funerals, spoke to their families.
Rodriguez's wife, she thanked me.
Said her husband had talked about how much he respected me, how he would follow me anywhere.
It made it worse, not better. Admiral Thompson placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Senior Chief, I've read your file.
Not just the official reports, but the classified evaluations, the peer reviews, the testimony from the men who served under you.
Do you know what they all said?
Marcus shook his head. They said you were the kind of leader who would take any risk, make any sacrifice, to bring your people home safely.
They said you never asked them to do anything you wouldn't do yourself.
They said they trusted you with their lives because they knew you valued their lives more than your own.
But I failed them.
You led them into an impossible situation and brought most of them home alive.
That's not failure, Senior Chief. That's heroism.
Marcus slumped back into the pew, the weight of 15 years of suppressed grief and guilt finally beginning to surface.
I used to be somebody, he said quietly.
I had purpose, meaning, respect. I was Senior Chief Marcus Williams, and that meant something.
Now I'm just the invisible man in the blue uniform who empties your trash and cleans your floors.
You're still Senior Chief Marcus Williams, Admiral Thompson replied firmly.
Rank doesn't disappear just because you change uniforms.
The man who led that rescue mission, who earned those medals, who inspired loyalty in some of the toughest warriors in the world, that man is still here.
He's just been hiding.
The Admiral sat back down beside Marcus, his voice taking on a different tone.
Let me tell you something about this hospital, Senior Chief.
I've been here for 3 days, and I've observed something interesting.
The staff respect hierarchy based on education and position.
The doctors look down on the nurses look down on the technicians, and everybody looks down on the support staff.
It's a dysfunctional system that's affecting patient care and employee morale.
Marcus nodded, having observed the same dynamics during his years at the hospital. But, today, during that emergency, I watched something different happen. I saw a janitor who moved through that chaos with the calm competence of a seasoned professional. I saw someone who anticipated problems, solved them without fanfare, and helped save lives without seeking credit. I saw leadership, Senior Chief. Real leadership.
I just did what needed to be done.
Exactly. That's what real leaders do. They see what needs to be done and they do it, regardless of whether it's their job, regardless of whether anyone will notice or thank them. That's the kind of leadership this hospital needs.
Marcus looked up at the Admiral with confusion. I'm not sure what you're asking me, sir. Admiral Thompson leaned forward intently. I'm not asking you anything yet, Senior Chief. I'm telling you something.
In 3 days, I've identified multiple systemic problems in this hospital's culture and operations.
Poor communication between departments, low morale among support staff, lack